every time I want to talk to you about some great topic about life, something happens in the news which disrupts all my plans. So, of course, the shootings, not just Boulder, but especially the shootings and mass murder, as it were, in Atlanta, have raised, that one raised all of this obsession now. We're bathing in this terrible lie of anti-Asian racism in America, another example of white supremacist thought that's taken over the country. It is an enormous lie. It is fomented. I am going to read to you a little bit from my column of this week because I want to get everything right. So why are they fomenting this lie? I gave 5 reasons. 1, to further demonize America. 2, to further demonize white Americans. 3, to further divide Americans by race and ethnicity. 4, reinforce or create the belief among Asian Americans that they are widely hated. And 5, engender ethnic identity among Asian Americans, most of whom have heretofore essentially considered themselves Americans who happen to be of Asian descent. It is a very nefarious project to spread this lie that there is some massive anti-Asian white supremacist bigotry out there. So I am going to take a question here. First, because it's about this subject, then I will continue my thoughts about it. So let's get this week's video question, and we begin.
Hey Dennis, my name is Jared, I'm 30 and I live in Los Angeles, and I'm a very big fan, by the way. My question to you is this, though I think I know what your answer is going to be. I'm sure that you have heard about the recent attacks at the spa committed by a so-called white supremacist. My issue with this is that we have seen time and time again, especially in this past year, the media use minorities as political props to further certain agendas. I don't think that one attack that we saw recently equates to white nationalism or white supremacy or systemic racism in general, when if you look at the statistics, before 2 days ago, there was a string of anti-Asian hate crimes that were not being perpetrated by white individuals. That's my personal view, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. Thanks, and keep doing the good work.
I will. Thank you. Megan, may I trouble you? Thank you. First of all, the lie begins with the actual murders themselves. They had, to the best of our knowledge, to any knowledge whatsoever, had nothing to do with the women being Asian American. I would like to add 2 of those murdered were not Asian American, but even the 6 that were Asian American, that was not the reason. We all now know the reason, unless evidence comes out, which is very unlikely. Everything's possible, but it's unlikely that evidence will come out that it was because they're Asian. First, the man has 0 record of tweeting or expressing having anything to do with Asians, period. There's always a record of this among haters, okay? There's nothing. Second, we know why he did it. He called himself a sex addict. He was in rehab for sex addiction, and he frequented at least 2 of these massage parlors. So this was his way. He was the son of a pastor, I believe. He lived with enormous religious guilt, and his way of assuaging it, sick, evil way, was to kill the people who fed his addiction. He blamed them, not himself. So that's it. That's the reason he did it. We know the reason. So the use of this is phony, but the whole issue is phony. So I will prove it to you how phony the whole issue is of this massive amount of anti-Asian racism in America. By the way, a guy that I call my drug dealer because he is my audio equipment dealer is Filipino. And he just called me up the other day, and he was essentially laughing. He's so 100% comfortable as an American that the thought that there's this anti-Asian thing going around. Most Americans don't give a damn, frankly, if you're Asian. It doesn't strike them as an issue. It's not worthy of talking. Everybody knows I'm Jewish, but it doesn't mean anything to 99% of the people who talk to me. They know it. That's the same with Asians. We know you're an Asian, but it doesn't mean anything. That's the American way. We know you're X, but it doesn't matter to us. We know you're black, but it doesn't matter to us. We know you're Hispanic, but it doesn't matter to us. Fill in the blank. This country has achieved the least amount of xenophobia and racism in any country in the world's history that had multiple ethnicities living in it. So listen to this. March 18th, the Washington Post reported, anti-Asian hate crimes have spiked 150% since the pandemic began, according to a recent study. Sounds bad, doesn't it? Spiked 150%. So I went to check the study because, it was had a hyperlink. The study cited by the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and other left-wing media is from the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino. The 150% increase in anti-Asian American hate crimes is contained in its fact sheet, Anti-Asian Prejudice, March 2020, according to which the number of anti-Asian American incidents rose, are you ready? This is the 150% rise, from 49 in 2019 to 122 in 2020. The entire edifice of hate against Asian Americans is predicated on an alleged increase of 73 incidents. By the way, this is incidents. This is not killings. This is not beatings. This is only incidents. If I call you a bad name, and it might even have nothing to do with your being Asian American, but you might take it as such, that qualifies in this, their words, what is it? Spike. That's it, spike. I love that. A spike of 150%. You realize these percentage things mean nothing. Let's say there had been one anti-Asian American incident, and the next year there were 3. That would be an incredible spike. 300%, right? More thoughts on that. Given that there are about 330 million Americans, and assuming a different American was responsible for each of the 122 anti-Asian incidents, that would mean 1 in every 2,704,918 Americans committed an anti-Asian incident. As regards violent acts against Asian Americans, listen to this. How many mainstream media are going to report this? According to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics from September 2019, blacks have committed the greatest percentage of violent crimes against Asian Americans. But the mendacious, lying media don't report that. Gets worse. The New York Times, the leader in mass hysterias fomented by the left, printed this headline last week. Quote, attacks on Asian Americans in New York stoke fear, anxiety, and anger. The subhead reads, hate crimes involving Asian American victims soared in New York City last year. Focus on the word sword, and you will appreciate the New York Times commitment to truth. If one reads past the headline, which most people do not, the article gives the actual numbers. Quote, this is in the New York Times article. The number of hate crimes with Asian American victims reported to the New York Police Department soared to 28. 28 in 2020 from just 3 the previous year. Yep, you read that right. The number of incidents soared and jumped to 28. In a city of 8.4 million people, including, as of 2010, over 1 million Asian Americans, right? So, about 1 in every 300,000 New Yorkers committed a hate crime against an Asian American, and about 1 in every 36,000 Asian Americans living in New York was a victim of a hate crime. To put this number into perspective, the odds of your dying in a motor vehicle accident are about 1 in 9,000. So you have a 4 times better chance of dying in a car accident than an Asian in New York does of being targeted for a hate crime. It's sick. It's all sick. It's all a lie. It's a gigantic lie, like systemic American racism. This is all lies, like the Russian collusion story. The mainstream media lie for a living because truth is not a left-wing value. It's a liberal value. It's a conservative value. It has never been a left-wing value. Another New York Times article under the headline, "A Tense Lunar New Year for the Bay Area After Attacks on Asian Americans," opens with this. This is as dramatic as everything I told you before. Quote, "The videos are graphic and shocking. In January, a local television station showed footage of a young man sprinting forward, then violently shoving to the ground a man identified as Vicha Ratamatpakti, 84, who had been out for a morning walk in the Anza Vista neighborhood of San Francisco. He later died. The Times piece never reveals the name or race of the perpetrator, Antoine Watson, a 19-year-old black man. Okay? So, my dear friends, I only do that so you get to see Megan's arm. It is a definite highlight of our videos, and I thought I'd share it with you. That is a disgrace. The whole thing is a disgrace. And then you read all these pieces in the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times by Asian American writers and so on. Oh, I thought I was American, but now I realize that people see me as an Asian and I have to rethink my Americanness. So it's amazing how the left media can manipulate the minds of people who know better, the Asian Americans themselves. So let me say to you, we don't care. The vast majority of Americans don't care. If you're Asian American, or Latino American, or Black American, or Jewish American, or Catholic American, or Buddhist American, okay? We don't care. We go on with our lives with you. That's the way it works. Okay.